We are back for video number 24, and today's topic is the blueprint of becoming a superhuman. So we have talked about everything that people can do immediately to get great results, but what it would look like to put all of this together for someone who says, you know what, it's time to step it up. I'm tired of living with low energy, low mood. My body is not looking the way I want it to look. I'm not performing the way I want to perform. I always get a little bit of brain fog. Environment is something I don't really understand. Hey, should I maybe move my house altogether? Or how do I improve my life to the extent where someone looks up on me and says within a year, 2, 3, or maybe it takes just 6 weeks, and tells, hey, this person is genetically gifted. They are just freak of nature. They can do all these things because they are X, Y, Z, and that's it. When in reality, there must be something that people can kind of take and go step by step to get to a point where they are proud of themselves and everyone else thinks, God, this dude, this girl is just something unique, and they just don't believe the results afterwards. So what would you say is this blueprint to become a superhuman?
Yeah, so number one is if you tied if you were diligent enough and went back through all of our material that we put out so far, you could put together parts and all of these things for you specifically. But I think today we should, focus on what does it look like generally to do this, to accomplish this, right? And I think we'll just start from the ground up, right? Like it's one of those things where if somebody came to me and said exactly that, right? Like what you just said there, then I would basically look at it from the ground up. What kind of habits do we need to get this person doing immediately? And we'll touch on those. The next thing I would do is what is mentally holding them back from executing on these habits, right? And then from there, you plug in things like nutrition, supplements, and training. That will be tailored to the individual in the form of what are their weaknesses that is clearly holding them back from a physical or mental standpoint. And how do you accomplish those things in the environment that they're in, right? That includes their work environment, that includes their home environment, and the location of both of those things. Where is it located on the planet? Where do they go to work every day? What does that building look like?
So I am interested in differences. So let's start from basics, ground up. Our basics were, hey, can you even walk without running out of breath?
Right.
So let's say someone is extremely fit by their means because they go to the gym every single day, but they have never done cardio in their life for the last 15, 20 years, let's say, or if not for all their life. So they don't even know if they are fit enough. And then you have someone who definitely knows they are not fit enough. They just fall asleep every few hours. They just get tired from thinking, get tired every time they have a meal, and so on and so forth. So what would be the differences and what would be same things for these very
I see what you're saying. Yeah, so things that would remain the same, irrelevant of whether they are fit or not, in my opinion, would be at least a daily 10-minute walk in the mornings, non-negotiable. I don't care which one of these characteristics you are or have or possess or lack. That is a non-negotiable, either done in the morning or the evening as far as the actual walk. But the getting outside at both of those times of the day are non-negotiable for either one. Now, once somebody feels that they're fit or thinks that they're fit, right, then that's where something valuable like a VO2 max comes in, like an actual test, you can go get a DEXA scan and get your VO2 max done. And then at that point, you can use their VO2 max to dictate how much actual cardiovascular training they will put on top of these daily 10 minutes, right?
So let me just add that VO2 max is not nice test.
No, it's not. It's not a nice test because that's actually going to tell us how fit you are, right? Like it's not going to be like, oh yeah, you're good enough. It's going to be no, we want to know exactly how fit you are, right? So you do the VO2 max test, and with that data, we can basically go, hey, you're actually kind of not that fit. You need at least 2 anaerobic training sessions per week, where we're going to do 4 to 5 minutes of interval training to raise your VO2 max ceiling, so that now you're not oxygen deprived, right? Some of the telltale signs, right? If somebody's, first off, if somebody says, oh, I'm fit enough, my cardiovascular work is fit enough, but their blood pressure is not adequate, or their hemoglobin and hematocrit is through the roof and they're not taking any drugs, it's like, no, you're not really that fit. You are clearly displaying signs that you are underfit. Your body is raising those markers, specifically hemoglobin, hematocrit, and those types of things, because it feels that there's no oxygen getting delivered very well. What does that tell us? That means your aerobic system is not adequate and this is going to be individually based, right? Like I can't tell you by looking at you how your hematocrit and hemoglobin are going to be looking for the level of work you're doing. It can only be done through a test, because bigger people, even though they might do cardio.
Sorry, you broke up a little bit. Your sound went off. So what did you say? Bigger people or what?
Bigger people might find that even if they're doing cardio, it's not enough cardio to get the response that they're looking for, right? And that's where the VO2 max test comes into play, because then at that point, you got to be a little bit more specific about the time and the intensity of the cardio to get the right adaptation. So,
and I think it's probably useful to add that VO2 max is something that most of the people will have access to, because a lot of universities will do those kind of tests, even for people who just walk in from the street. And more often than not, I know in UK you can easily access it through internet and find. I know personally people who do that.
In the US, you can too. Yeah, in the US, anywhere that you can get a DEXA scan, they are usually going to offer a VO2 max scan, and another crucial part to this, right? Maybe you're unfit enough to do a VO2 max test. I've ran into people where it's like, hey, we can't do the VO2 max test. So something that is a little bit more, it's not direct measurement, but it's close enough, is an RMR test done with a breath test. And that's basically your resting metabolic rate with a breath test. It has to be done with a breath test. If it's a calculation, throw it out. That don't work. It needs to be the breath version. Why? Because it's directly measuring the carbon dioxide excretion of your mitochondria in all your cells. So it's literally telling me, how good is your engine running? It's not going to lie to you, and you're going to come back most of the time. You're going to be like, wow, my metabolism is actually underperforming by quite a bit. That's a red flag that cardiovascular work needs to be improved. And then if you're already doing, these daily 10-minute walks, 20-minute walks, then it goes, okay, well, how do I improve it? Now you get targeted with your cardiovascular work. So again, that's the difference, right? That part is going to be individualized.
So in everything you just described, correct me if I'm wrong, has no application if you are not willing to change your mindset that you need to become a superhuman.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you are coming in a mindset of, hey, I need to run these tests to know how healthy I am, they're becoming irrelevant. But if you come with a mindset, hey, I'm doing these tests to become much better than I am now you're going to really appreciate doing it.
Yeah, I love how you put it there, because each one of these phases or tests or heuristics that we're using are not for us to do something. It's for us to tell you what to do, right? And you have to be willing to do those things, right? Just like literally like a doctor, when you go to the doctor and there's something wrong, he gives you something to take, right? You're doing something. You still have to take it. The doctor can't force that down your mouth. What we're doing is, some of this might be some supplements, but a lot of this is going to be stuff that you're not doing physically, and we're requiring you to do because we have sticks and data telling us, hey, you are lacking in these particular things. You have to change your mindset around that. Yes, it's not as easy as taking a pill, but trust me, you're going to be much, much better off. The cardio component that we're kind of talking about right now.
So we move in, you've done the baseline, And now we would move probably on making sure that you do something more advanced, which is blood tests. Can you tap on that about, okay, to become much better than you are now, why is it important and what differences are you looking for? And I would really like to hear your experience on how this has been kind of interfering with what doctors usually would say. Because I've had a lot of people I work with, they come to me and they say, hey, doctor said everything is fine, but I'm still tired. And then I go through everything. Yeah, your doctor didn't even do the blood tests that are necessary for you to know that you are healthy. So let's dig into this.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's actually problem number one everywhere. And things, because they only test like your cholesterol, your blood sugar, and that's like if you just go in and say, hey, I want a yearly checkup, right? So you're not even getting the markers that are really going to tell us how out of shape you are or how out of health you are, right? So some of those markers come in your iron test, right? And I mean a full iron test that needs to have iron, ferritin, and iron saturation percent. That tells us a lot. Again, going back, it ties in a little bit into your environment. It tells me about your environment. If it's signaling that you're oxygen deprived, it tells me about your aerobic capacity, because iron is the major contributor to delivering oxygen. And if your system is underdeveloped, you're going to display signs that your body thinks it needs more iron than it should to make more hemoglobin available for more oxygen availability.
So is there specific maybe medical conditions or metabolic disorders that kind of will have these adaptations?
Yes, absolutely. So then, and then that also comes into pre-diabetes, diabetes, type 1 and type 2. Those types of people are going to have altered ferritin, altered iron metabolism, because their body is sensing that there's a drop in mitochondria, which basically is a fancy way of saying your body thinks that you're not getting enough oxygen, right? When you have these types of conditions, and these markers are leading markers, right? So ferritin, iron, things of that nature are going to start displaying that telltale blueprint before you become type 2 diabetic. It's going to start happening, but like in the pre-diabetes stage, or even slightly before that. So if I start seeing these blood markers out of whack, it starts to tell me, ooh, you know what? Your glucose was a 95. That's still acceptable to a doctor, but I also see that your ferritin and your iron are out of whack. That's like, that's a red flag. Let's make sure that your insulin level is tested. And then if your insulin level comes back to above 5 and your glucose was a 95, ferritin things going on, then immediately my focus is, okay, to get this person healthy, we need to focus on all the things that are going to prevent insulin resistance, right? And so then that program evolves a little bit more in that direction of like, hey, on top of getting outside every morning, I want some cold exposure put into there, because that's going to help drive signaling to your body to down regulate insulin resistance. And that will also dictate some of the changes that we might need for your diet, right? So just from that simple blood test alone, I can make a lot more precise adjustments to your nutrition, to your cardiovascular work. And some people will need it, some people will not, right? Because of those things.
And how about people who are doing some hormone replacement therapy or something like that? I often see guys in their 40s, 50s, they come to me, hey, I'm doing this, and my doctor prescribed me to take this to lower my estrogen, my prolactin, progesterone. And we both have seen very weird numbers on a paper, which sometimes for us would kind of ring the bells. But after talking to the person, it's like, no, this is fine. This fits for you. So is there something that you would consider that might be misunderstood by a general practitioner if they don't do an interview with actual persons they have run blood tests on?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the big ones is estrogen, right? You mentioned that, where it's like, hey, sometimes you're taking testosterone replacement therapy and your estrogen goes up. Do you need to do something about that? No, my opinion is no. If you're taking not by default anyway, right? It's one of those things. Hey, if you're taking testosterone replacement therapy, you're feeling fantastic, work load is going great, and you're sleeping well, but your estrogen is high, but you don't display any signs of problems. Suppressing that with a medication is probably not the right thing to do. Now,
So what would
I'm
be
not
the
gonna,
problems with high estrogen? And I also would like to hear what would be benefits from higher estrogen.
yeah. So one of the main, if you're a male, right, and you have high estrogen or higher estrogen, right, and you're on testosterone replacement therapy, one of the main symptoms that are positive is you're going to have a higher sex drive to a certain point, right? Eventually, is there a way that estrogen goes too high that drives sex drive down? Yes, but that's why there is feedback every week, feedback every month, where it's like, hey, I'm experiencing really high sex drive right now. And then you go get an estrogen test and you're like, oh, you know what? My value was X, right? And so then you write that down anecdotally. And then maybe at a 3 or 4 months later, you experience that your sex drive has dropped significantly. You get a test done again, and maybe the estrogen has climbed twice as high. So now you know, okay, there's a Goldilocks zone in there, and I only manage it when it gets out of that zone, and not because the number is flagged on a blood test, right? We don't treat blood work, we treat the individual. The blood work tells us how much to treat it, if it needs treated, right? Not just by default. Other things like that are prolactin, for instance. Genetics are from a certain kind place, or you live in a certain area, more northern, where sunlight is significantly dampened for like 6 months out of the year. Guess what? Your body's going to find ways that keep its intracellular hydration higher. Prolactin is actually, everybody thinks that it's for milk production. That is a secondary effect. That's, because both men and women have prolactin. Why would men and women have prolactin? Men don't make any milk. Now women were the template, right?
Sorry, you broke up a little bit after women were a template. So
Yeah, sorry. So women are the baseline template at stages. So the reason why men and women both have prolactin is because physiologically, evolutionarily, prolactin is also a hydration hormone, intracellular hydration. So if you live somewhere where we know that hydration is dampened either environmentally or synthetically by your lifestyle, guess what? Prolactin is probably going to be a little higher than it should. Is that a bad thing? Probably not, because if we dampened it, you might start to experience underhydration problems. Whereas if your body naturally has brought it up, it's probably for a reason. Nature doesn't really make mistakes. The mistakes are on us interpreting what nature is doing and then doing wrong things to correct that, or living in a state like of environment, like whether that's synthetic or just where you live compared to your genetics, that's not conducive for your health. That is a real thing in this modern world, because we feel as humans that we can live anywhere in any kind of situation, just by the fact that we can be indoors all the time. That is not true. There are some people that will not be able to live in certain parts of the world because they are not genetically cohesive with that environment. It is that simple, right? And at some point, you will run into those people, and blood work and tests like this are the way to do that. And that kind of leads to a little bit of kind of like the next assessment, right? Hey, we get you getting outside, getting some cold exposure if needed, getting some aerobic conditioning, moving in the right directions and stuff like that. And then we start seeing what are your underlying conditions of problems if you have any.
So going from all that, it seems to me that step 2, the most important part of that would be knowing where you are at, not what anyone else says, and knowing where you want to go. Because I oftentimes see a lot of people who come to me and they have done their test with their general practitioner and whatnot, and there is 1 or 2 things a little bit out of range by 1 or 2 points, and doctor has prescribed a million follow-up procedures, and you need to do this, you need to do that, literally scaring them to death that everything is wrong with them. And when in reality, it just shows what they are actually executing in their day-to-day life. instead of showing that there is something outrageously bad with their body happening.
Yeah, and that's where the environment comes in, right? So everybody kind of thinks that their environment is only where they live and where they're located. Their environment is also the electronics that they're exposed to, the lighting that they're exposed to. It's literally everything that interacts with your body, and how your body creates its own internal environment in response to that. So when I say environment, I'm literally meaning everything that interacts with us, right? And that's where people, too many people are like, oh yeah, my environment is great. I get outside and I live, wherever you live and whatever, and there's no pollution here and whatnot. I'm like, that's not enough. Your environment is, what are you, daily exposure to that? Your daily exposure to electromagnetic fields, whether that's in your control, like your Wi-Fi, your cell phones, or out of your control. Maybe you live next to,
would that be
an airport.
Number 3 in your ladder of becoming a superhuman? So let's say step 1 would be understand that there are non-negotiables for you to become better. You just have to understand that you need to create different identity, and the things that need to be done will always have to be done. To start your car, you need to bloody start your engine. To start your body in better environment and to have a better outcome for your body, you will always have to do set things that are just non-negotiable. If you don't do them, don't ever dream about becoming better. Number 2 would be making sure you know where you're at, know where you're moving, and assess it as regular as it needed. And number 3, you would say, is understanding your environment and understanding what you can do with that environment to benefit you and take you up a level. Would that be the right?
And what you can't do, right? And what you can't do.
Yeah. So if you live in different things, for example, you're not telling me that, hey, I live in bloody Antarctica, I need to eat high carb diet, those kind of things.
Exactly right. That would be a non-congruent argument for somebody that, say, lives in Canada, right? If you live in Canada, am I going to prescribe a low-fat, high-carb diet to you? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That would be a thing you cannot do in Canada, right? Whereas, hey, if you live in Florida or in Mexico or, Spain, something closer, on the Mediterranean, something along the equator, yeah, I'm probably going to recommend a slightly higher carb diet than I would for somebody that lives at higher latitudes and so forth. So your environment also dictates the things you can't do, right? So that's also a great thing to kind of know, hey, I live here, so that automatically puts a lot of things off the table. Stop thinking about those things. They're not even a thing that you can do unless you're willing to change your environment, right? And that, kind of leads me to probably number 4. What are you willing to do? What are you able to do, right? Financially and physically, as far as improving your environment, improving your lifestyle to get more of these things that we've talked to about up to this point. Because these things up to this point, your baseline engine mechanics, your daily habits, and your consistent environment, from that point, that block of stuff right there are major movers for keeping you healthy. And performance, whether it's mental or physical, only comes when you can preserve health and leverage it to get performance. So if you don't take care of this block of stuff that we just spent quite a bit of time laying out, you don't get anywhere. You will only be able to get temporary performances. And that performance could be mental, physical, financial, whatever, right? If you don't preserve this health metric, this health block of stuff that governs your health, you don't go anywhere. So
it's interesting, there were so many steps you just discussed, and you still haven't even moved to nutrition or training plan or supplements or anything like that.
No, because they don't matter nearly as much as these things. They just don't. I'm just telling you, and don't take it from me. You know this. People that will contact this way.
Well. It's just so
because
to get across.
Yeah, because they come to me with a freaking pile of supplements like this freaking big, or drugs, right? And I'm like, why are you taking? Well, because I'm not getting the results I want. And so I'm taking more and more and more. I'm like, well, it's not, you putting more shit on that, that's not going to fix it, right?
Yeah.
So we go back to the baseline, everything that we've talked about to this point, because it matters more. Because then if you change all of these things, guess what? You also have changed. You've changed the environment of the supplement or the drug that you're introducing it into. That means that the action of the drug or the supplement is going to now be better or worse, depending on how you've made your internal environment. I didn't emphasize it very much, but what I said was, hey, this engine mechanics of cardiovascular work, lighting work, sunlight work, cold exposure, the diagnostics of how we introduce good motor, right? Like, how do we build your good motor? Motor is in, that changes your internal environment inside your body, which is what the drugs and the supplements are going to be interacting with. You see what I'm getting at? So you're changing what you're introducing the drugs into. That's major. So now, once you've done those baselines, once you've, and it could take a little while. Just because, you know what I'm saying?
I'm always usually very mindful about giving people time to kind of adapt, and at the same time, I like to check if they are willing to adapt. If someone goes a couple of weeks and we're going through mindset change, we're going through understanding how environment impacts you, we're going just to understand that, hey, showing up is more important than obsessing about your calorie intake and whatnot. And going from that, if someone just goes, no, I just want to get shredded within 6 weeks, I'm like, yeah, you're not focused on the right thing. You should
find a different coach to do that
instead of just a snapshot once in your life and then forget about it and go back to your bad habits again.
Yeah. And then something that I didn't mention on there, right? Another diagnostic tool that's very important, undervalued, is an omega-3 index test, because that will be influenced for everybody, irrelevant of where you live and irrelevant of your fitness level or muscular development level or any of that. If your omega-3 index is not acceptable, that automatically makes me prescribe you a certain nutritional requirement for cold water seafood, right? That is crucial, because that's what separated humans from other primates. People don't understand that yet, but they will when time comes. That is going to be a key feature in any nutritional program that I deal with anybody. There's going to be, just like that baseline of cardiovascular work, there's going to be a baseline of some seafood that's non-negotiable.
And this is probably a good place where to just insert the thing, why so many ultra processed Beyond Meat or whatever you call these things look healthy on paper, but they are not.
No, they are not going to perform, because they are not providing the actual nutritional requirement for this thing right here, right? This is like, everybody knows that if you're pregnant, you need some prenatal vitamins. What's in those prenatal vitamins? The most important constituent in that is DHA. Why? Because a developing brain cannot develop with a proper amount of DHA. Once you understand into the specifics of how DHA is used in the body, you quickly understand that, oh, this is a thing that should be permanent in most people's diet. And depending on how bad you are at that, it could mean that you're in a deficit of it, right? Yeah. It could literally mean that you need more of it than you really think. And, that's more of individual. Right now we're getting into, just like the cardiovascular work, now we actually get a test and we go, okay, this is how much you need versus this person versus this person.
So let's go back again. So you've got step 1, step 2, step 3. Step 1 is understanding your mindset, understanding that you need to go through your non-negotiables. Step 2 is, hey, let's go through your diagnostics, before, after, mid. It always have to be there. Every time you jump in a car, you probably want to check if your tires are not flat before you start the car. Those kind of Then number 3 would be just take charge and understand limitations of your environment and understand how you can use it in your benefit. So would you say number 4 now would be the time for nutrition, or would there be time now to plan your strategy for improving your physical performance, agility, and so which one comes first for someone who wants to become better? Will it be nutrition, or will it be the adaptive?
It will be nutrition. It will be nutrition in the aspect of starting with this test, the omega-3 index test, which is why I mentioned it. The first thing with nutrition is how much fatty fish, cold water seafood is the requirement for this individual. right? That would be the very first thing that I want to nail down when it comes to nutrition. Then the next thing would be, where do they live? Close to the equator, far away from the equator. That's
So
going to
nutrition
dictate.
would not be based on macro split or percentages or whatever.
No, it would be based on this person's
size.
size. Yeah, yep. It would be based on this person's size. That's how much food they're going to eat. But what that food consists of is going to be, hey, what's your omega-3 index? What is your place on this planet? And then from there, we go, okay, in relationship to your body weight, how much food you're eating. This is how I'm going to split your carbs versus your fats in relationship to where you live. And if the place you live in has seasons, if it has seasons, then I know that your carbohydrate to fat ratio will have to be maneuvered as the season progresses in a cyclical manner. And in some places, there isn't a season. There's only a dry and a wet season. So in that place, it becomes more static, the carbohydrate to fat rate. So those are the specifics. That's why I'm not giving macros and stuff like that, is because I can't do that unless I know all these things about you, right? And so that would be number 4, right? Nutrition. How does it get laid out? First, let's see how big you are. That's easy, right? That tells me how much food you need to eat. And more importantly, on the how big you are, I don't need body weight. I need lean body mass. So again, get a DEXA scan, something like that. Lean body mass, or even better, an RMR test, because that solidifies everything. And then one of those two will definitely give me individual total amount of calories needed. And then depending from there, that's where all these things that I just mentioned before come in. Influence: carbohydrates, fats, proteins, and vegetables and fatty fish, right? That's basically how I lay those out. And then from there, that program evolves to how you respond to all of these, and then how big of a deficit you were in some of these nutritional requirements. Then, and only then, once we've dialed that in as far as like the needs that this person's going to need, now we start planning their training, right? So now they're training.
For me personally, to reach this step, I would develop a training plan to just improve their ability to move. So first 2 weeks, anyone who comes with me would be like, hey, can you even reach your back with your, can you scratch behind your back? You'll be surprised how many guys can't even scratch their own head.
Or do a squat for more than a proper squat.
Why are we doing all these weird things? But it's because I want you to show up first for yourself. You know, and whilst we are doing that, not wasting time on doing something specific training wise, but keeping that specificity as broad as we can, to make sure that when you actually start nailing your training plans, that's going to be specific for your goal, your body is prepared to move the way it should, which in my personal perspective is you should be able to move as a kid for as long as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that, just saying that, right, that already starts to paint the picture. Okay, this person, if they can train 4 days a week, I'm going to split it 50-50% of the work. So 2 days out of the week, it is concentrated on the things you just laid out. Getting better at moving your body and being 100% in control of your body, right? 2 days of some really gritty, maybe even / boring work with your body weight, right? And people are going to be just messed up from that. Like, I promise you, that's not
part of training, is controlling your body weight.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So from there, okay, we have 2 dedicated days to this, and those days are going to be influenced on capacity to move your body, and that's going to drive work capacity in general, right? Then the other 2 days can be a little bit more specific if this person has a specific muscular development type of goal, or if they don't, if it's just general health and being kind of a badass, then those other 2 days can be more of like, how would I say, on systems, right? So then we can be
you broke up. You said, how do you say, what systems?
Demand on systems. So in other words, we can train them as demand on muscular system, demand on nervous system, demand on work capacity system, and you can do those all with weights, right? And if this person, for example, wants to,
if I'm wrong, that is decided based on, again, your blood test, your physiology, what are you actually capable of, what food can you tolerate, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, because there might be some incongruencies, right? If you're a type 1 diabetic, well, then maybe I don't really want to influence just heavy tension nervous system work. I want to actually influence more work capacity work. You know, that might be some health concern incongruities. But let's say you didn't have any of that, right? Then those other 2 days would be more along the lines of your objective. Hey, do you just want bigger muscles? Or, hey, do I just want more strength, but I want to kind of remain about the same body weight? Or, you know, maybe I have a goal like I want to run a marathon, or I want to track. Those other 2 days aside from the
We
body
lost the
weight
sound again. So you want to run a marathon
or a triathlon or something along those lines, right? Where now those other 2 days are more specific on making sure that you're injury free for these other things. And
I lost you again after injuries.
If they do have specific goals and they don't have any injuries and they don't have any restrictions, then more than likely there's going to be room for a 5th training day or 6th training day that's more specific to the specifics of that goal. But at the base, it's going to be 4 days, 2 influenced on what you said, and 2 influenced on what is their other goal of how they want to look. And then those start to play a role in that development stage of that muscular system. You know, whether it's the nervous system, the just muscle skeletal system, or aerobic capacity, right? Or just capacity of work in general.
And correct me if I'm wrong, would this be the perfect time to assess how much time you can actually kind of give to this, and probably also appreciate this is going to take time. It's not going to be just a couple of weeks. It's not going to be 2, 6, 12 weeks. It should be a lifestyle change, that to become this new person, physically and emotionally more superior than you were before, you need to understand that this will have to change as you age, as your exposure to stress changes, as your environment changes, as your seasons of the year change, and so on and so forth. So this is actually as much of a template. It needs to be the template that adapts throughout the year, throughout your years, and everything else.
Yes, absolutely. So you can think of it of, hey, this is going to take a minimum of 16 weeks to realize a real big potential. And if you adapt it like you just said, then this becomes a revolving cyclical 16 weeks that slightly changes in variation or stimulus depending on where you are, like maybe your lifestyle changes or your environment changes, or your environment is changing because of seasons, because of where you live. So yes, so everything you just said. So you got to think about it like the change that I start right now. Say I started this program, I fleshed it out, and I started it now. It's going to be 16 weeks later before I realize major benefits from it. And then it might be cyclical 16 weeks to realize major lifestyle improvements all over the board that now a year or 2 later make it seem like you're superhuman and have great genetics.
Yeah, so it's changing and adapting and making sure that you never forget that this is new identity, and you better appreciate that you will have to live it if you always want to stay fit, healthy. You can't just get fit, healthy, and stay there by relapsing to your old habits.
No, absolutely not.
So we get through all these steps. We get to getting our nutrition laid out, getting our programming laid out. Now, what would be the next steps that people kind of need to make sure that they are addressing in sense of that if they do take this thing, it really solidifies their ability to maintain what they have achieved at, because we both know it's easier to get somewhere than it is to maintain it. It's easy to make money once and just to lose it all. It's easy to get in shape once and then lose it all. It's easy to learn something, go to university once, and then go back home, get your certificate on a wall, and forget everything you learned. How do you actually solidify everything we've just walked through and kind of make sure that it sticks? So what are prerequisites, maybe mental, physical, what things people need to take into consideration to make sure that they not only get there and feel it once, but it actually becomes their new reality, that is there. So for me, personally, I like to get people in some kind of great shape and maintain it for 3, ideally 6 months. Because then even if they leave me and we don't work together, when they relapse, they will want to get back there because they felt great for so long. Now they will never tolerate lower standards anymore. So what can people do to prolong staying in that place? Is it having someone that holds them accountable all the time? Is it maybe improving their environment? Is it maybe, hey, stop training at home gym because now we helped you out or whatnot? Somebody guided you through getting in this best shape of your life, physically, mentally, and whatnot. But now you're on your own. Maybe you need to move out of your home gym and go in an environment where you're training with somebody who's like-minded and so on and so forth. I like asking people, hey, can you sign up to some martial arts program and maintain that a couple times a week just to make sure that you are not on your own? So what would be step number 6 after going through all these things to solidify their new identity so they don't get drawn back into old habits and don't get settled for, oh, I got there, I know how it feels, but instead appreciate I am there and I am leading by example. What can be done to achieve that shift in mindset?
Well, this is going to sound like a shameless plug, but it literally is hiring people like you and me. Like in the sense of
so anyone who understands these concepts and anyone who holds someone accountable.
Yes, because of what you said at the end of that step 4, which is, hey, this is going to be a 60, or that I was also saying, this is going to be a 16 weeks to even see the first phase get done. And there's going to be multiple phases depending on how far you need to go to achieve your goals, right? Those phases are going to be needed to be managed because they're not going to be identical every time. So you need somebody like us, in a sense, not really to like tell you exactly what to do, but to start guiding you through the appropriate changes as your life improves, as your environment changes, etc. And just like you said, to talk through all of the different strategies that you can employ to keep you accountable and keep you wanting to make more progress, right? Because all the things that you just said are fantastic ideas. It doesn't mean you have to do them all. And those are individual to that person, right? Maybe this person doesn't like martial arts, but they love to play tennis, right? So it's like, oh, hell yeah, okay. I want you to start finding a Facebook group about tennis players in your local area. And I want you to go and become competitive there with that group. I want you to actually get involved with some physical activity where you're challenging other people with your attributes. That's going to keep you motivated to keep your attributes that you've made, anything of that nature, right? And again, I'm just saying these things because they're individual, right? And so people like me and you are literally going to ask you some of those questions. And not only that, we're paying attention to like when you talk and when you check in and things of that nature, where, you know, all of a sudden somebody says, oh, I used to do this, you know, then maybe they have a previous athletic
we all have had a person in a gym saying to us, yeah, I used to do that when I was your age. And I'm like, how old do you think I am? I'm not 16 anymore. I'm going to do this until I'm way older than you are.
Yeah. And the reason why is because of this little hack, which is the hack of some people will be internally motivated no matter what, right? But a lot of people are I wouldn't say motivation.
Sorry, you broke up. A lot of people are
not internally motivated like that, where they just need an external source of motivation and discipline, right? So it's one of those things where having a group of people or even a couple people that you can consult with that keeps you on the right track and moving forward, you know, maybe it's once a month or twice a month, right? The first little while, it's better to have a coach so you have a weekly progress type of check-in and push towards where you're going.
So it's almost as what we do when we catch up with all the team. You know, we meet up in Vegas, Canada, have a great time, and we brainstorm new things and help each other to kind of level up.
Yeah. And that's exactly what you need for any goal like this, but even with physical goals where you're actively trying to change your physique. You need somebody or a group of people, 2 or 3 or 4, or even just one, that can keep you in the lane of the right direction to.
So let me just interfere. What we talked about just recent videos about developing the mindset that's required. I like to use the hack of use your family as your motivation. You should become an anchor that shows an example to everyone around you what is possible with discipline, with commitment, with so and so. Just because if you are doing that consistent enough and you are doing it with high enough energy, people will want to do that as well because they see the benefits and quality of life it does for you. Would you think that would be a good example as well? Or do you really need someone at really high level just to keep up with what you're doing?
I think that it depends on how far you started, right? Like if you're really starting at the in that, then yeah, you're probably going to need somebody else. But after, after maybe you've had your first initial transformation, maybe that took 8 months or a year, then after that, then yeah, you probably don't need an external source to do that. You can solidify things like your family or your prowess in the competition that you're doing as a individual or something along those lines that keeps you motivated more internally and disciplined more internally. You mentioned martial arts. That's a great way to keep the discipline of like, hey, I love progressing. I see my progress, and this progress is due to these other things that I'm also doing that we laid out earlier, right? And so then that can keep you intrinsically motivated long after you leave a coach or a coaching program.
Let's be honest. So personally, myself and you will never have a period of our life without a mentor. It's just not going to happen.
No, probably not. No, you're right. Like at this point,
and this is why, so when I'm talking about kind of focusing on shifts that, hey, you can use your family and friends and environment to motivate you to stay in that level. But never forget, if you are best in your room, you are losing it. You always need to find someone who is better than yourself.
Yeah, and that's actively what you and myself do is, hey, we find people that are way above in the things that we want to accomplish or the things that we want to know about, and we go talk to them, right? Whether that costs us money or not, it doesn't really matter. The whole point is that we need to get in that person's circle, and we need to become one of their 6, right? One of their revolving close people to really become mentored by that person, right? And that not only benefits me, it benefits that person because I'm bringing new ideas, new perspective to that person, even though they're higher than me in whatever I'm trying to learn or whatever I'm trying to achieve. The fact that I'm motivated, the fact that I'm ready to do those things automatically means that I'm bringing something to them as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very important distinctions that me and you, we are both similar in ways that we are working with people. Even though we are kind of helping them, we are also learning from them.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
And we both are quite picky with whom we're going to work with. But that's because we want to give them, and we also want to learn from them.
Yes. Yep.
So, yeah, step 6 for me, I wrote it down. It would be get in the right environment, always have a mentor. But don't forget that you are doing this for a purpose, to lead by example, to help others to level up as well.
Yeah. And when you find that you're the one giving out all the orders, it's time to start leveling up your circle of 6.
Yeah.
It's time to go, okay, I need to rotate out my mentors because I have outgrown them, or I am now leading the pack. And now it's like, okay, well, there's more to gain there, right? So let's find another person or two that's different than me, brings different perspective or higher perspective, or however you want to word that.
Yeah, definitely. So because goal is not to outgrow our mentor, goal is to be us, identical us, but make sure that we nurture that in directions that we want to go. Instead of just copying someone blindly and, hey, I'm going to be next David, I'm going to be next Juris. You're not going to be that. It's just genetically not possible. It's not possible from environmental mindset and all those kind of things, but you can be best you and always try to reach towards what else can I do to improve everything else around me.
Yes.
So let me see if because this quite sounds quite a long thing, but as we already discussed, it should be something that keeps repeating itself over and over again, just to make sure you're staying in the same level. So people have noticed that I train very different based months to months and so on. But when you compare all my years, I train very similar all the time. I have my periods of strength, I have my periods of agility, I have my periods of strength endurance, hypertrophy. It always repeats itself. It might not repeat itself in 12 months. It might be 12 for 24 months to 36 months, and so on and so forth. But it always goes back to step number one. Okay, understanding that I need to create identity that I'm going to live by, and some non-negotiables I will never miss. If I do, there's no chance I'm going to get to the goal I want to go. Then step two would be, hey, understanding the feedback my body gives to me and use it in my advantage instead of stressing about some things that might come up as wrong, even though it might actually show me what is right for my environment. So understanding these subtle differences and just don't fall for the, hey, my GP said my kidneys are packing in or whatever, when in reality you had 3 days going out, drinking, being completely dehydrated, and then giving your blood test. It's just, understanding those differences. Then step three would be taking charge of your environment and understanding limitations and using the advantages. Then
yes, I want to add one thing to that environment. Most people think that that's out of their control. And I want to emphasize that it is always within your control. It's just the things that you have to do to make it in your control are sometimes things you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
You can go ahead.
So we move up from there. Then we have step number 4, which is now you need to nail your nutrition. Understand the effects of your environment that have on your nutritional needs, seasons of the year, your blood tests, your physiology, everything will determine what you can actually do. And don't fall for the, hey, you need to follow just keto, or you need to just be carnivore, or you just need to be vegan and this and that. Do not put yourself in a box that's not suited you without doing all the diagnostics first. Then step number 5, hey, now we focus on, let's get you healthy, let's get you moving like a child, understand your goals, timeline you have, and strategies that needs to be implemented so you don't relapse to your old self, because it's going to be uncomfortable. To become something you are not, you have to do things you have not done. And then step number 6, what could be the final step before cycle repeats itself, is get into the right environment and don't be afraid to ask for help. Which a lot of people who are usually the people who go to gym, that's commercial gym, they are going there and just, oh, my friend is doing this stuff for the last 10 years, he's going to show me what to do. No, your friend does not have a clue. They just don't know. And they don't know what they don't know because they have never asked for help. And now you're following their lead. And cycle repeats itself, and you will be one of those people who just goes, no, this is not for me. My genetics don't suit anything. Nothing works for me. I've tried everything. When in reality, you've tried nothing, or you tried everything that your friends suggested you who had no place on suggesting you anything to begin with. Is there anything that I miss? Or is there your type of summary you would put in a place that's a little bit simplified than I just kind of put out?
No, that covers a lot of the details and also leaves room for individualization, because at the end of the day, all of these steps that you just mentioned, the intricacies in those steps that you mentioned are general, right? So if somebody listens to this video, what you just outlined is the general template. When it comes to applying it to yourself, you have to actually go through all these diagnostics and you have to actually execute on this, on the things you said. And that will look slightly different for every person. So just know that, right? These are broad general terms of how you need to approach big time change like this.
So for me, it sounds like understands that you are trying to reach the goal, but while this outcome sounds exactly the same like person next to you, and steps sound exactly the same, those steps will be actually different. So let me give an example for someone who's trying to improve their bench press. Someone with shorter levers will probably train slightly different than someone with longer levers. You know, you're still trying to get better at this specific thing, same as your training partner, but now you need slightly different approach just because you're moving completely different.
That's right. That's right. So that's a way of how your environment, your physiology environment, changes the prescription, even though the goal is the same.
Yeah.
Right. So that's very easy to understand for just about anybody. And now you take that concept and apply it to all the steps that you just laid out. And that's how you get an individualized program. Right. And so, yeah, that's exactly how I would lay it out. That's exactly how I would describe it to somebody if I wanted to tell them everything that they would need to know to be able to execute big time.
Awesome. No, I think this is a great summary, and I really appreciate your time as usual. And we're going to leave it as that. You know, if you are serious about improving your health, improving your mental state, physical state, thinking about longevity, these things will drastically improve your ability not only perform physically but also mentally, and give you appreciation about life when you get fitter, healthier. You know, you shouldn't be waking up with sore back every single morning. You really shouldn't be having some kind of indigestion issues just because you ate something that your favorite coach or whatever suggested on Instagram profile without ever knowing anything about you. You shouldn't be stressing about things that are irrelevant to you before you even know what is relevant for you without doing any kind of testing and stuff. And these simple 6 steps will change everyone. And if you want to know how to apply them, go listen to every single video we've made so far. This is video number 25. And if you're really wanting to nail everything on a more personal level, you can also anytime reach out to myself, David, or anyone you feel like is knowledgeable enough for helping you out to assess where you are and lay out a proper road towards where you want to go.
One thing I want to add to there. It can be obviously reach out to us, right? This is what we're talking about. But this video just gave you a template of the questions that you need to ask whoever you think might be qualified to help you. If they are not prepared to give you details about these 6 steps, they're not the person for you if you're wanting long-term change.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, David, as usual. Appreciating your time and dedication to kind of give out all the knowledge and experience you have. And we'll catch up soon.
Awesome. Thank you.